Okay.
Well, that's fun. I love that.
There's nothing more fun.
Beautiful.
Okay, I'm muting myself.
All right. Well, welcome everybody. I'm Love Coach Scott Katamas, and welcome to the Awakening World. And as some of you may not know yet, what we're doing is every weekend taking a particular theme and exploring it on Friday night, on Saturday night, and again on Sunday morning. And this week's theme is exploring the true meaning of divine love and how miracles are connected to divine love. And of course, we're non-denominational. We're not promoting any particular religion or faith, but we honor all practices and encourage people's and appreciate the various spiritual practices. I am super excited about my guests for this weekend, and starting with my co-host. I get to have this amazing woman, Eden Amadora, as my co-host for all three shows. Welcome, Eden.
Thank you, Scott. It's an honor to be here. I'm excited about the show.
I'm really excited about it, and I really appreciate all the contributions you make. For anybody who doesn't know, Eden is, she really is the embodiment of divine feminine. She lives it, she breathes it, she teaches it. We're going to learn a lot about, all throughout the weekend, we're going to be learning about the amazing work that she does through her circle with women. And she just did an amazing program last night that a lot of my friends and myself watched. So anyway, we're going to be learning all about Eden throughout the weekend. And welcome, Eden.
Thank you.
And I'm going to bring on Reverend Deborah Moldow. I know her as the leader of the, oh my gosh, I'm not going to space on it.
Evolutionary Leaders, perhaps?
Thank you. The Evolutionary Leaders Network, which I just joined, and I'm really, really, really excited about it. We had our first meeting, was that yesterday? And it was just beautiful to see all these amazing human beings that Deborah has brought together. She's an ordained interfaith minister. I'm going to put the spotlight on you, Deborah, so everybody can see you as I spotlight you. She's an ordained interfaith minister, and she's really committed to assisting in the transformation of human consciousness and transforming it to a culture of peace. And in the few months that I've really gotten to know her, she is living it, just like Eden. They're both people who really live it. She contributes to her global effort through her ministry, through international peace work, interfaith efforts, speaking, and writing. All of this is part of her movement of awakening humanity. And so it's great to have you with us. And I'm going to go back to gallery view for a moment so that Eden can introduce Jimmy Twyman. Oh, you're muted, Eden.
I'm going to spotlight Jimmy while I talk about him and how wonderful he is. Here we go. Hi, Jimmy. So James Twyman, or Jimmy Twyman, is the New York Times best-selling author of 18 books.
Oh no. Is that, I think Eden just froze. Is that me or is that you? Can you guys hear me?
Yes, yeah. We can hear you, but I think you're right. Eden froze.
Yeah, so we lost Eden. All right. Well, this is Jimmy Twyman. And we will kind of get into, he's written 18 books. And what I know and remember about you, Jimmy, is that you are really just such a beloved peace troubadour. And, you know, I'll bring on Deborah, too, because Deborah can cover here a little bit. What do you know about Jimmy?
Oh, Jimmy and I go back a long time.
We do.
To when he was, in fact, known largely as the peace troubadour. And I was representing May Peace Prevail on Earth at the United Nations. And we did some events together at the United Nations for world peace. And then we met up again at the Parliament of the World's Religions in Barcelona, where we planted a peace pole together. And Jimmy sang his beautiful May Peace Prevail on Earth song and his St. Francis prayer, which I hope he's going to sing this evening. And then we met again in Japan. Is that the last time we saw each other in person? Was in Japan?
I think it might be. Yeah, I was thinking about that earlier today. I think you're right.
So I'm really thrilled to see Jimmy. And as fate would have it, Jimmy has a beautiful intentional community in Ajijic, Mexico, and I live in San Miguel de Allende, Mexico. So we are kind of neighbors, and Jimmy's path has really unfolded in such beautiful ways, where he became a Franciscan brother, and I understand that you're going to be ordained as an Episcopal priest.
In about 8 days, yes.
Woohoo!
Coming up quick.
So I'm excited to be together with you again, right here on Awakening World.
As well, it's so good to see you. You and I have had some great adventures together.
Hopefully we'll have some more.
I hope so.
How does that feel to you, being ordained as an Episcopal? Like, what's that mean to you in kind of your life's journey?
Oh gosh, that's such a great and big question. Where do I begin? It's, some things are just so deep inside of us. There's no way we can say anything other than yes. Mm-hmm. And my journey through my faith, all the different experiences I've had with many different religions, many faith traditions, and it's like it's led me all back full circle to where I began. Because when I was 18, I left home and became a Franciscan and was studying to be a priest within the Catholic tradition. Left that, opened up tremendously, but I was never one who threw out the baby with the bathwater. I was always still very connected with my roots. And here I am all these years later. I found a lot more inclusion within the Episcopal and the Anglican Church. And so I joined a Franciscan community here. A lot of people don't even know that the Anglican and the Episcopal Church have religious orders, but they do. And so I joined a community called the Community of Francis and Clare, and then finished my studies so that I could become an Episcopal priest. And as I said, that's happening in 8 days. So it's wonderful to be able to share that news and to be able to join with all of you with that intention.
You said something really important. And by the way, Eden's back, so we'll turn it back over to Eden in a minute. But, I'm going to put Rev Deb and myself and Eden all on for this next part. Because you talked about how you didn't throw the baby out with the bathwater. And, we're talking about divine love this all weekend long. And one of the things that I've noticed is that almost everyone I know rebelled against whatever religion they were raised in. And usually for good reason. Usually they saw the hypocrisy or, it wasn't for them. What's tragic are the people that did throw the baby out with the bathwater, that associate any form of spiritual connection with that. And, certainly all four of us are blessed. And I'd say probably the majority of the people watching this show are blessed in that we have some form of spiritual practice, whether it's yoga, meditation, playing music, martial arts. There's a lot of different forms of spiritual practice. But it's heartbreaking to me when I'm working with someone, usually it's a man, who when they left the church that they were raised with, they shut the door to spirituality. And so when you said that, it just brought that wave of awareness for me up. And just curious if any of you have anything you'd like to add to that thought.
Well, the first thing I'm remembering is something that a friend of mine said years ago. His name was David, and he was from Boston, had a very thick Boston accent. And people used to ask him, well, you're a Course in Miracles student, you're doing all this metaphysical stuff, and yet you still go to Mass and you still, pretend like you're a Catholic. How can you do both of those things? And he would say in his very thick Boston accent, I know she's the whore of Babylon, but she's my mother.
I love that.
And that's, I always kind of felt that way. that phrase, throwing out the baby with the bathwater, I just never felt the need to do that. Obviously, there were many things that I disagreed with in the faith tradition I was raised in, but there were many things that still were very rich for me and still are. And so I kept those things and just didn't pay attention to the other stuff. And I feel like, the way I was raised, the way many of us were raised was very narrow. This is who you are. This is the church you belong to, and you don't stray outside those boundaries. I think all I've done in my life is go like this, is to include so much more. And in fact, the way I usually put it is I'm in love with all the ways people love God, love the divine. And it doesn't matter how you do that, but do that in whatever way you're most passionate about. And so for me to be returning to more of an institutional church and serving as a priest, it feels very natural to me. And yet it doesn't mean that I'm rejecting anything that I've been doing in the last 30 years. It means that I'm including everything. And I think that's the important part of it.
Beautiful. Yeah, thank you for sharing that.
When I was trained as an interfaith minister, I'm sorry.
Go ahead,
Deborah.
When I was trained as an interfaith minister, I had the good fortune to attend the new seminary, which was started by an incredible visionary named Rabbi Joseph Gelberman. And his motto for the seminary was never instead of, always in addition to. Mm-hmm. And so like Jimmy, I found so many beautiful windows on the truth in all different faith traditions. And I bow to all of them and incorporate many of them in my own life. And when I started the Garden of Light in 2015, it was because I saw this emerging global spirituality. I saw a spirituality bursting through all over the world in people of all different faiths. And it's something that's so important that's happening on the planet right now that isn't getting any recognition. But I think there is a sense of spirituality that transcends the different religions and allows us isn't this the first time in history when we could actually choose our spiritual path? That all of the holy books and all of the teachings are open to us and available. And we are able to dive in and see the richness and the beauty in all of them. And I think this is new on the planet, and it's really important right now. It's really important that we are now respecting the indigenous traditions, for instance, which are so important in teaching us so that we can relearn how to live in harmony with the earth. And I also want to give a shout out to the United Religions Initiative. I see my beautiful friend Sandy Hart that I know from the United Religions Initiative here in the room with us, where we've come together with people from all over the world of all different faiths, and they all share this new spirituality, this sense that what's in our human hearts is the most important, regardless of our faith, that we can all work together to make this world a peaceful and more beautiful place for all of God's children.
Oh, thank you so much, Deborah. Wow, I'm just overwhelmed with joy right now. I was sorry to miss my introduction of James. I got very excited about him being an Episcopal Franciscan because the St. Francis prayer has been such a part of my life for 20 years that I blend into my own personal prayer practice. And I had an unusual beginning with religion in that my mom studied comparative religion. She was raised Jewish and she married a man who wasn't Jewish, and he was kind of like a Taoist gardener. And then they went through the whole 70s psychedelic era and questioned everything. And then she said, I really want to know more about all religions. So as a young teen, I was pulling books about Hinduism, Buddhism, Taoism off her shelves. She gave me Baba Ram Dass Be Here Now at 13. 14, Autobiography of a Yogi at 16. And I've just found my own way by and by through yoga and then shamanic studies. And then in the last 13 years, Divine Feminine Mystery School training, where we honor the feminine face of the divine, which is so lacking in the West and in our culture. So for me, I'm a big yes to this wonderful heart-led spirituality that is, it is the yes and, as Deborah said, it's the weaving. In fact, a shamanic teacher of mine, Harley Swift Deer, said, I highly recommend a triple prong path. So don't throw out the baby with the bathwater, blend what is right for you. So for me, it's the yogic, shamanic, and divine feminine mysteries that have become my way of entering into that faith, and the studies of those that have given me so much beauty in my life.
Thank you. What a wonderful group of presenters we have. And I always like to include you, our Zoom room. And we actually will probably even pop the spotlight on you a little bit later on in the show. But I want to read some of the things that people said. And Sandy Hart talking about Lake Shrine, I probably have been to Lake Shrine at least 100 times in my life. When I lived in Los Angeles, I lived in Topanga for 6 years and always went to Lake Shrine on my way into town or on my way back. And so many of you are talking about how you kind of, left your original religion and then either came back. So I just want to acknowledge all of that. And of course, Noel says, ultimately, a religion of love and devotion is what's universal. Absolutely. I want to acknowledge Percy. He writes an interesting short story that in the fall of 1972, he was with two other people in a devastating car crash where there's glass everywhere. The car was bent, but nobody was even hurt when everybody should have been killed. And that miracle gave him so far another 50 years of life. We're glad for that, Percy. There's Percy. Very happy, Percy, for these, that you got 50 more years, and looking forward to seeing how the next 50 years go for you. So everybody
I'm also looking forward to it, Scott. It's been a pleasure sharing the past 50 with so many billions of human beings. And, even a few more would be welcome. And I'm glad I'm here with you.
It's always good to have you with us, Percy. Thank you so much. Thank you. Well, we had originally planned on having Eden lead us in kind of a meditation and a practice. And then we are very blessed that Jimmy's going to sing for us. So I'm going to turn it over to my co-host, Eden.
Thank you, Scott. And I'm not sure what happened before. I'm praying, and hopefully we're going to have great internet connection for the rest of the show. So my intention is to give us this direct embodied experience of expanding our heart coherence together, and just feeling that divine love that we're talking about. We're talking about miracles of divine love. Let's have a direct embodied experience of that by coming inward together. So let's close our eyes for a moment and just start to breathe a little deeper than usual. Feel your central channel align. Bring the crown of your head back and lift your heart as if your heart chakra is a beautiful flower, a lotus or a rose, turning its petals heavenward. And as you breathe into your belly and expand your heart, you can feel both this very grounding energy inviting you inward and downward, this kind of more magnetic gravitational pull, and then this expansive lift of the heart. And let's take a deep breath together into the heart. Using an sound, a little bit of vibration. Sound is the quickest way to still the mind, calm the emotions, and relax the body. So let's do another Beautiful. Now bring your attention to your hands. They could be resting just very lightly in your lap, turning them open like lotus blossoms, and feeling every fingertip like a little vortex of light, and the central palm chakras tingling, pulsing. And then we're going to slowly bring our right hand right up to our heart chakra. feeling that connection, like blessing, anointing our own heart, just giving that a little light pressure, feeling this connection. It releases oxytocin, it calms the nervous system. Deep breath into the hand. And then bringing the left palm to the hara, the dantian, the power center under the navel. And just for a moment, holding your precious body temple. This is where it's all happening in the now, coming home into this moment together. And one more shared breath, a deep inhale with an ah. Ah. And in this moment, as you hold your precious heart, traveling inward and feeling that place, some call it the jewel in the center of the lotus flower, the place that is unbreakable, untarnishable, the sacred heart. And as we connect with the sacred heart, feel into something that you are grateful for. For gratitude is the opener of the way, and the way of love, the way of higher frequencies. So anything that brings you joy and gratitude, just presencing that in this moment. I'm grateful for this moment. I'm grateful for this chance to come together in this beautiful way, to share, to feel connection. So feeling your gratitude for the simple things or the amazing miracles in your life. And then we'll go ahead and let our hands come back to our lap. And just feel both lifted in your heart as if wings are unfurling from the back heart, and grounded. And let's root down and just imagine that each of us from all over the place is like this bright light node here for the one, for the collective heart of humanity, that we are rooting grace on earth by sending down a beautiful grounding cord together into the earth. And you can visualize that going all the way into her heart, connecting to your heart, and then this light web we are. And we lift our hands to seal this with namaste. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Blessed be.
Thank you so much. We're going to be blessed to hear some music from Jimmy, and then Reverend Deb is going to give us some definitions of divine love and miracles. But we're going to turn it over to Jimmy for now. Thank you, Eden. That was beautiful. Really beautiful.
Oh Lord, make me an instrument of your peace. Where there is hatred, bring your love. Where there is injury, pardon. Where there is doubt, bring your faith. And where there is despair, bring your hope. Where there is darkness, bring your light. And where there is sadness, your joy. Oh, divine Master, grant that we may not seek to be consoled as to console. To be understood to understand, to be loved as to love. We are now your instruments, beloved. For it is in giving that we receive, in pardoning that we are pardoned, and in dying to ourselves that we live. Oh Lord, I am an instrument of your peace. Wherever you are, sing that one line with me.
Oh Lord,
I am an instrument of your peace. Oh Lord, I am an instrument of your peace. Oh Lord, I am an instrument of your peace, of your peace, of your peace.
so beautiful. Thank you so much.
Thank you. You're welcome.
Yeah.
That always touches me so deeply. And I know it's because it comes straight from your heart.
You know, I remember when I wrote that song, it was in 1994. And I remember it so well because I was home in my family's house in Minnesota, and I was just rummaging through drawers. And one of the things about my parents is that they didn't throw much away. So it'd be 30 years later, I'd be going through an old drawer and there's all my old stuff is still there. And I found this holy card. If you were raised Catholic, you know what a holy card is. On one side, it had a picture of St. Francis and then the prayer of St. Francis. And I thought, I want to put this to music. So I took my guitar and the card into the bathroom because, as any musician knows, that's where the best acoustics are. And it was effortless. Maybe in 10 minutes, I had put that prayer to music. And it was almost as if something shifted when that happened, because only a few days later, a friend of mine gave me a sheet of paper that had the peace prayers from the 12 major religions of the world. And these were prayers that had been prayed when Pope John Paul II called all the leaders of all the different religions together in 1986 to come to Assisi, because St. Francis has always been known as the first great ecumenical saint, primarily because of his the work that he did with the Muslims, in particular with the Sufis in Egypt. And so they all came to Assisi and they each prayed the peace prayer from their tradition. So the Dalai Lama was there. He prayed the Buddhist prayer. The Jewish leaders were there. All of them came together. And a friend of mine happened to be there. He brought those prayers back, gave me a copy. It was only a few days after I'd put the prayer of St. Francis to music, and I just began to read these peace prayers. And one by one, it was as if they were already written. And I think it didn't take more than an hour to put music to all 12 prayers. I knew it was a miracle, and I knew it was a miracle that was meant to be shared. So I began just traveling. I wanted to be like St. Francis. I wanted to be this penniless troubadour. sharing these prayers. And I started getting invited to countries like Iraq and Bosnia and Serbia and many other countries to share the peace concert at times of great conflict. And here we are so many years later, and those prayers are just as meaningful as they were then, maybe even more so now, because I really believe that we have come to a kind of climax where our divine love is so necessary. And I would say everything that's happening in the world is really to be expected, because the light is getting brighter and brighter. I don't know if you can feel that or not, but the light that we are all manifesting in our lives and our communities and through every faith tradition is getting so bright that the shadow has to come up in order to try and make one last survival run. And yet, if we stay true to that reality of peace that's at the core of all of our being, then of course the ending is sure, as we know. And so it's just so beautiful to share that prayer, to remember sitting there in the bathroom of my parents' room and how it all began.
I just love what you said. Can I respond, Scott? That just was so beautiful, Jimmy. And I'm also a musician, so I've done many a bathroom recording. I can resonate with that. Best acoustics. When you speak about everything that's happening now is to be expected, because this awakening is unstoppable. This collective awakening is on the rise, and we feel it more than ever. And it's almost like that rub for the pearl, with all the apparent division and othering and, political unrest and tension. I was speaking with Scott earlier, driving across the bay today. It was so beautiful. The sun was shining here, even though it's winter. It was like 70 degrees. And I had this feeling to the music that was playing in the car. And the lyrics that were coming in for me was, the sun and its warmth is one. The sun and its light is one. The sun and its rays are one, as we are all one in the infinite sun. And I was feeling that reality that came into my awareness, that the human heart emits photons. And they've done this study. They've done this fascinating study. There's a German scientist that was able to measure the amount of light the human heart radiates when it's in a state of love and joy and gratitude. And it increases exponentially compared to a normal kind of, busyness of mind or contracted state. So I was thinking about how we are that light into the world when we're in that divine love state, when we're in that unified field. And when you spoke what you did, I was just like, yes, we are awakening. There's no stopping this wave, this heart awakening, and blessed be to that.
And the greater the light, the greater the shadow. We live in a planet of polarity. For every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. And I think we all do believe that. That's why I call it the awakening world. That's the show we're on. And that's the show I'm dedicated to. But waking up is not always comfortable. When we wake up, sometimes we have to look at the shadow. We have to learn how to work with the shadow. I am going to put the full spotlight on Deborah, Reverend Deb, because we haven't had a chance to hear too much from you yet. And I know that you had mentioned just before we came on that you had some definitions to share. I do want to mention a couple of things that I missed about her. She's the founder and president of the Garden of Light. It's an online platform for the emerging global spirituality, which we're all a big part of. She's also the director of the Evolutionary Leaders Circle of the Source of Synergy Foundation. And she really is amazing at bringing together visionaries. And many of the people you've seen on my shows, and many of the people you're going to see on my shows this year have come through Deborah or are dear friends of Deborah's. So thank you, Deborah, for your incredible service to our world. And tell us your definitions, if you will, of miracles and divine love.
Well, thank you, Scott. And thank you, Jimmy, for your wonderful music. And I really appreciated what you said about the turbulence in the world today, because I think without it, we can't have transformational level change. Requires a certain amount of chaos as the old order breaks down. And Eden was talking about when we choose love and forgiveness, that we radiate light. And we're at a place in our evolution, in our human evolution, where we know that we can choose those states. I think when I was growing up, nobody realized that. People thought if they were angry, that they had a right to be angry and stay angry, and that was it. But we now know that when we transmute the negativity that comes through us naturally in our emotions and our reactions, that it's better for us and it's better for our world. So we're at a really, really exciting time in human development when we desperately need a different way of living on this beautiful planet. We cannot continue the way we are. We will go extinct. But as Jimmy was saying, as all of us start to radiate more and more light, we can bring about something that's never been seen here before. So that's exciting. And I know that's why all of you who are on this program and who are listening to it or watching it on Facebook, you're part of it. We're all part of it. So tonight is about miracles of divine love. So I was thinking about what that meant in my life and what that means to me. So I was actually thinking about the word miracle. It's not a word that I use very often. And, the conventional meaning of miracle is something that takes us by surprise and is wonderful. And when we experience that, it lifts us up, right? But as you all know, Thich Nhat Hanh passed today at the ripe age of 95, and he passed on an auspicious date and at the 0 hour. His life was definitely a miracle, and I know we all owe a huge debt of gratitude to his teachings on mindfulness. And he has a couple of wonderful quotes about miracles that come closer to what I think a miracle is. He said, around us, life bursts with miracles. A glass of water, a ray of sunshine, a leaf, a caterpillar, a flower, laughter, raindrops. If you live in awareness, it's easy to see miracles everywhere. Each human being is a multiplicity of miracles. Eyes that see thousands of colors, shapes, and forms. Ears that hear a bee flying or a thunderclap. A brain that ponders a speck of dust as easily as the entire cosmos. A heart that beats in rhythm with the heartbeat of all beings. When we are tired and feel discouraged by life's daily struggles, we may not notice these miracles, but they are always there. That is what Thich Nhat Hanh said about miracles. And see, I think this is really the point. Every breath we take is a miracle. And if you take a breath, so everybody, let's just take a breath, like take a nice breath. And now think about how many breaths you had before that one today that you didn't have to think about, that brought the life force into your body and animated every cell. Is that not a miracle? Everything around us is a miracle. Even the man-made things are a miracle, because if you take just a simple object, this is my little Mexican mug, what went into the human ingenuity to come up with the concept of something to hold water. And then how that got refined into something you could hold with a handle. And the colors that were painted on, learning how to paint. And even a color, isn't red a miracle? Or maybe for you it's blue, that's a miracle. But everything is a miracle. So that brings me to the very famous quote from Albert Einstein. And I have to just give a little caveat here. Nobody really knows whether Einstein is the one who said this or not, but we all love this quote. There are two ways to live your life. One is as though nothing is a miracle, and the other is as though everything is a miracle. So when we have that kind of awareness, that mindfulness that Te taught us, when we are present to the very moment, to each thing that is in our awareness as being a miracle, then how can we help but be filled with gratitude? So that's my definition of miracle. And now let's move on to divine love. So, what is love? Normally, in our everyday life, we think of love as our attachment to another person. I think love is the force of attraction in the universe that holds the entire universe together. And that is also my definition of God. And it is said that God is love, but what does that mean? Does that mean it's a father figure? Well, sometimes it's helpful to think of it that way, because certainly a father figure would love all of his children equally. And if love is the guiding force in the universe, it's much more than the attraction between people that birthed every one of us was the attraction between two people, right? But what if love is also the attraction that holds the universe together, that binds the planets to the sun and the galaxies, that is the force of inside an atom, which can't even be described in language. So if love is the very power that holds the universe together, if the love of the sun is what brings the plant forth from the earth, then love is everywhere. Love is the miracle.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. I'm going to bring our other panelists on. And of course, I want to acknowledge a lot of really wonderful comments going on in our chat room. And I was chatting with some people watching on Unify. And I want to welcome everybody watching on Facebook. Thank you to John and Summer Raymer and the Sign Network for putting us out. Over 100 different Facebook groups and pages that might be carrying us right now. And of course, a big hello to our friends with Unify. And also want to thank Alan Steinfeld and his YouTube channel. So all of our broadcast partners, thank you for bringing us out. And I'm trying to keep track on what's going on everywhere. So your thoughts, your comments, I will bring some of them in. I also wanted to just for a moment acknowledge Thich Nhat Hanh. Tomorrow, Eden and I are going to do a special commemoration of Thich Nhat Hanh. We'll incorporate that into the early show of tomorrow's Awakening World. But I had an interesting experience with Thich Nhat Hanh. Way back in September, I think it was September of 1986, I attended a one-week retreat with him in Ojai. It was put on by the Ojai Foundation. And as fate would have it, during the retreat, a very significant wildfire broke out in the Ojai Valley. And we were on constant alert to possibly be evacuated. And because there was a wildfire, there were helicopters coming in to fight the wildfire, and there's a lot of smoke and all this noise of helicopters. And Thich Nhat Hanh was so beautiful because he acknowledged that he was completely stimulated, that it was bringing back all of his trauma of being in Vietnam during the Vietnam War, and how his own struggle. He was teaching a week-long retreat on mindfulness, and how he was struggling to be mindful because of what was happening. And the level of honesty was so profound. And really, here it is, that's many years, 86-14, 36 years later. And that's what stood out for me, was his willingness to be so human, even though we were all there to see him, for him to be so vulnerable about what he was going through. And I think that quality of humility, Jimmy, you have it. And there's something about you singing the song of St. Francis, because obviously I think we all honor St. Francis as someone who is very, very embodiment of humility. And humble doesn't mean we can't be passionate, right? You model that beautifully, Jimmy. Clearly you're passionate, right? So humility doesn't mean contracted or pathetic. I think it just means grateful to the glory of God, grateful to a higher power.
Yeah. It certainly doesn't mean that we're not to let our light shine. It certainly doesn't mean that we're to dim the truth of who we are, the expression of that truth, in order to not seem like we're trying to make ourselves bigger than others. It's none of that, but it is a state of being and just something that comes to us naturally when we encounter the awe of living in grace. And you're right, St. Francis had that, certainly. I mean, he had, during his short time on the planet, he became probably the most famous man in Europe. In fact, when he died, a third of Europe was in one way or another part of the Franciscan order. A third of the whole continent, either first, second, or third order Franciscans. And he initiated what we now know as the Renaissance. He was such an inspiration to the artists of that time. And yet he was so humble. I'm so grateful that I've always had that attraction to Francis, because it certainly has shown me the benefit of not only doing what I do and being passionate about it, but also not taking any credit for it. That's, I think, the difference. We let our light shine, but it's not the identity that's taking, there is no identity here to take credit. But if I can become that transparent, an instrument of peace, the thing about an instrument is that it doesn't play itself. An instrument allows itself to be played. If this, instrument thought it could play itself, its strings are not going to vibrate. But as soon as it surrenders and falls back into the arms of the master musician, the strings begin to vibrate. So it's that falling back, it's that surrendering, it's letting the light shine so brightly, but not taking credit for it. It's not about the attention being on me, but on thee and on each one of us. And I think that's so important today, because we live in a time when so many spiritual leaders are focused on getting more followers and getting more attention and being the authority. I think we're better off when we don't worry about any of those things and just seek to be used by God and to be instruments of peace. And the impact is always so much greater anyway.
Beautiful. As you said that, something that I thought of was actually the 3 levels. The instrument is surrendering to Jimmy, and Jimmy at his best is surrendering to higher self, great spirit, flowing through you and then flowing through those fingers.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
I
wouldn't have it any other way.
I'm so lit up since Deborah's share about her definition of what a miracle really is and what divine love is. And one thing when you were sharing that I was so aware of was this kind of divine child innocence that not only your aura and your frequency reminded me of when you were reading Thich Nhat Hanh's quote, I could feel that awe and wonder and innocent heart that sees everything as a miracle. And when I was listening to you, I could just feel my own love level expanding and the joy level expanding to be with you in that vibration of divine child innocence and wonder again, and to see through those innocent eyes instead of being so caught up in our mental looping and struggling and resisting what's happening, to be present, to be permeable by the miracle of this world, the beauty of this world. And when I think of, I know we're in love with St. Francis tonight, we're just exalting him. And I'm so glad when I think of him with the animals sitting with him and on him, and how his frequency must have been so peaceful and so loving and so coherent and harmonious with nature for the animals to trust him and to feel at home and at one with him. So I'm aware of this image that every time Jimmy speaks, I'm seeing St. Francis with like a little bird on his shoulder and a deer near him or something. He's often depicted like that. So I just wanted to just kind of circle back into your share, Deborah, and just thank you for that just exuberant divine child innocence and the way it lifted my spirit and opened my heart even more. And I'm sure our listeners felt the same thing when you were explaining what a miracle is to you and divine love is to you.
Well, thank you so much. And I love seeing the spider webs over your shoulder because aren't they an amazing miracle? We don't think in our ordinary mind that an insect can create a work of art like that. And your spider webs also have stars behind them and all of those amazing lights and patterns. And it's all so beyond our minds. The whole point of meditation is to get beyond our mind because our civilization is so mental. There's never been people as mental as we are.
I agree.
In history as we know it, that's never happened before. And we're so caught up in the box that we've built to live in that we don't see the miracle of everything around us and everything within us.
I had a shamanic teacher that used to say, give your mind to your heart, give your mind to your heart over and over. And I think about how we've put the mind on the altar of all that is with academia and just the intellectual, rational, very left brain industry and success that, we strive for in our culture. I think of Rodin, the thinker, and it's very serious and heavy. And sometimes I play with words and I like to imagine that we're evolving in this great hologenesis from Homo sapien, the knower, the thinker, to Homo luminos or Homo sanctos, this heart-centered being that we give our minds to our hearts and we see through the lens of the heart more and more.
And through the heart, we are allowed all the colors. Our image of the business world is suits that are black and white and pages that are black and white. But now as we're moving into even this virtual world, look at what's behind us, full color and life and beauty and art and music as pathways to get there. Aren't we lucky?
Sure.
Yes.
So I want to acknowledge that as we're kind of in this love fest and we're in gratitude, but I want to acknowledge that for many people, they aren't in that place. For a lot of people, they're really challenged. Honestly, one of the great things my father taught me was he said, Scott, when you go to a party, don't just look for the in crowd. Don't just look for the beautiful people. Look for the person who's standing by themselves and maybe feeling alone. Walk up, say, hi, I'm Scott Katamas. That's something my dad taught me. And I try to bring that into these shows because, we want to inspire, but we also want to have empathy. And and be in the awareness that for a lot of people, it's a really hard time. The changes we're going through, the pandemic, it's uncomfortable. And so I'm just curious, because all three of you are very compassionate beings. Any thoughts, any tools, any practices that you want to share? There's somebody watching this who's not feeling it at the level that we're blessed to be feeling it right now.
The first thing that comes into my mind is to be the source of that which you want most in your life. I think that's one of the keys. There is a prayer that Mother Teresa wrote based on the prayer of St. Francis that brings that to light very, very succinctly. Some of the words are, when I'm hungry, give me someone that I can feed. When I'm thirsty, give me someone to give a drink to. When I'm cold, give me someone to keep warm. And I put that to music many years ago. And I think of all the prayers, literally thousands of prayers that I've put to music, that's my favorite because it brings the solution so close and makes it so simple to be the source of that which you most want. So if it's love that you want in your life, find some way to increase the love in someone else's life. If it's more energy, energize somebody else. It's like a miracle. Deborah, I just loved everything that you shared because it literally is a miracle. The more you give it, the more it comes back to you, the more it manifests in your life. And it's such a simple thing, but it's true and it's real. And so that's the first thing I would say is be the source of that which you want. Because as the prayer of St. Francis says, it is in giving that we receive. It is in loving that we are loved. And if we just let it be that simple, we realize that it always has been.
Jimmy, you're going to be a wonderful priest.
Well, thank you.
I'd like to share with people who are hurting right now what I do when I'm hurting. And I've been hurting a lot lately because there is a lot of illness around me, people that I care about in my life who are suffering right now, some with COVID, others with other things that happen as we grow older sometimes, or just in life. And, there's kind of this new age approach sometimes of, we say, well, what's the lesson? What can I learn from this? And that's valuable. And I agree that there are karmic lessons that we need to learn. But what I also believe is that we need to be with what we're feeling. And that if we're feeling sad, discouraged, even the despair, sometimes I go into a lot of despair around the state of our world right now and the way people treat one another in the public sphere and the climate change, the overwhelming evidence that we are in a loop of climate change that's not going to get better anytime soon. And I think that when we feel these negative emotions, that it's really important to be with them, to acknowledge them. We are humans and we have these emotions. And just because we know that we can choose gratitude and that we can choose love and that we can stop and look at the beauty all around us, that doesn't mean that we're capable of doing that in every minute of our lives. I believe that we need to be present to our humanity. And I'm grateful, Scott, that you brought that up. And you're getting a lot of positive reinforcement for having done that in the chat. You are a very compassionate person. You are an amazing listener, and you are a person who lifts up other people, which I think is one of the highest in human traits. But yes, thank you for acknowledging that there are times when we are in sadness, when we are in pain, and it's okay to be that way, and it's okay to reach out in prayer for the comfort that we can get from unseen realms. And it's okay to reach out to one another and be there for one another. And it's okay to sit in a dark room and just be sad sometimes when you need to be sad. And I think you were talking about living in a world of duality, that when we give room to those feelings, then we allow the joy to return.
Thank you so much, Deborah. I so resonate with this, feeling it, just allowing ourselves to really touch it and feel it. I really appreciate this author that created the Gene Keys named Richard Rudd. And he talks about how the shadow contains the gift, how it is through the shadow. And Scott, you used that very word, shadow. And he said, let's not deny the shadow tonight when we're in this very divine love. And we in the mystery school have this saying, the sun and its shadow complete the great work. Umbra solis, the sun and its shadow complete the great work. And the way that we hold shadow is that which is yet to be loved into wholeness, that which is yet to be brought into the light of our loving awareness. Often our suffering is in those parts of the mind, the subconscious, that are looping and are stuck and are creating something like charge or dissonance in our bodies over and over, and the stories we tell ourselves about ourselves in life. And I feel like we have been going through a collective dark night of the soul. And I've been through a couple dark nights of the soul, times in my own life where there was such deep disillusionment and despair that I didn't even want to be in a body. There was a time where I hit such a bottom that I stopped eating, drinking, and sleeping. Some hold this as like a spiritual crisis or a Kundalini emergence that from the other side have changed my entire outpicturing of my life. But I had to go in and through, and it took a long time. It took a long time of not understanding what was happening to me and why nothing that I had found joy in mattered at all. And I know that there are many of us that are questioning the system, questioning, it's like this, some to speak about the revelation or this kind of apocalyptic time, meaning the unveiling, the revealing, and how it can be jarring, and how the awakening process is not all butterflies and rainbows. It's actually painful. It's often first very, very uncomfortable, because everything we've clung to as real or having meaning, as what our egos and identities were attached to, will be questioned and challenged and dismantled at some point or another. And it is in that dark night of the soul that the grace comes in. And in my own life, the greatest kind of heart awakening and forgiveness and peace has come on the other side of the deepest sorrow and suffering and despair. So we are in this together. We are not alone. If you're suffering, if you're listening and you've been suffering, know that you are not alone. And especially if you're having this kind of awakening experience where you felt so much happier before, you're like, this awakening is overrated. That's definitely a phase that I've been through as well.
Thank you for sharing your personal story, Eden. Thank you. I want to read a couple comments from some of our listeners, and then I'm going to put the spotlight on Josiane, who wrote a book kind of connected to this. Omashar, who's going to be playing music tomorrow night for our show, writes, "The darkest point is just before the dawn." Noel writes, "There is profound holiness in the dark and in the shadow." Chris writes, "Shadow is density, light is transparent. And Whitley Strieber, who's actually watching right now and is going to be on our show next week, he mentions could talk about that.
And isn't this also the mystery of the cross? Marianne Williamson, who's going to be on tomorrow night, she used to say when she was teaching the Course in Miracles, she used to say that for every crucifixion, there is a resurrection, but in between there are 3 days. And those 3 days can be 3 minutes or 3 weeks or 3 years, but it will happen. That level of darkness that Eden was describing always produces a counterpart level of light.
Well, that's a beautiful analogy. I'm going to remember that one. That's a good one. Jimmy, we haven't heard from you for a moment. What's coming up for you?
Well, I was thinking, the beautiful thing about a sharing like this is that we hear different ideas and they come from different directions. Some of them hit really strong and some of them maybe not as much. But the thing about music and prayer and art and things like that is that it has a tendency to slip around through the back door where there are fewer filters. And so I thought maybe what I would do is play that song that I mentioned that comes from that prayer that Mother Teresa wrote. And maybe it'll be a way for us to take this message and to hear it in a slightly different way.
How fantastic. Thank you.
So this is actually called the Servant Prayer. When I am hungry, give me someone that I can feed. And when I am thirsty, show me someone who needs a drink. And when I'm cold, give me someone to keep warm. And when I grieve, give me someone to console. And when my cross grows too heavy and its weight I cannot bear, when I need someone to hold me and it seems no one is there to lighten up my heavy load, give me someone who deserves to be loved just as I do. Give me someone that I can serve. I need some time, let me sit with one for a while. And when my heart's heavy, Let me find someone to make smile. When I'm humble, give me someone that I can praise. And when I need to be looked after, show me someone that I can raise. When I need some understanding, show me someone who needs mine. And when I think of myself only, draw my thoughts to those who are kind. And when I'm so poor, give me someone who's in need. And when my eyes are blind to what is holy, let me see the Christ in the eyes of each one whom I feed. Let me see it in their eyes. Oh, Holy One, Holy One. Thank you. It's kind of hard to talk after that, isn't it?
Really beautiful. Really, really beautiful. You know, and I think that song is an answer to the question we asked of how to manage when we're in that dark place. Find somebody that we can be of service to. You know, always. And Marshall Rosenberg was my mentor, my primary mentor. And he said something along the lines that it's a tragic human experience when someone has not learned the joy of service. And conversely, we all know that the happiest people consistently, people that are consistently happy, are people that are in service and they've learned the joy of service. And the most unhappy people are the people who just haven't learned the joy of being of service. And that, I was thinking, reflecting on that during your song, Jimmy.
Actually, I want to tell you about something that I'm in the process of doing, which I am excited about because it is all about service. I was back in Portland a few weeks ago, and while I was there, I bought this converted half school bus. It's converted into a small RV, and it's really kind of a cafe. It opens up like a food cart. And I drove it down to Santa Barbara, and my intention is to go down there about every 4 or 5 weeks, spend a couple of weeks there. And as part of my Franciscan ministry, I'll be living in the bus in the areas where the homeless, the shelterless are staying. And every morning, get up, make a huge thing of coffee and a huge thing of oatmeal, and just serve the people there on the streets. Wow. I think that's what someone like Francis would have done. He would have been right there. He wouldn't have been theorizing or just talking about it. He would be doing it, saying less, doing more. And for me, it's called the St. Francis Cafe, by the way.
Oh, wow.
It's being painted and everything. So I'm really excited. In a couple of weeks, to get back to Santa Barbara so I can get going on that.
One of my best friends, his name is Lucky, and he lived in Marina Del Rey. And in fact, for 15 years, whenever I was in LA, I stayed with him. And every day he would make sandwiches and go out and feed the homeless. And I remember going out with him one time, and I'm in this, oh my God, isn't it cool? And this guy comes over and goes, "You're 30 minutes late." It's like, hey, there you have it. So people might start getting pretty used to it, Jimmy. And yeah,
We have been for 3 weeks.
exactly.
Back in Mexico.
Reverend Deb or Eden, anything you'd like to share?
I'm just beaming joy and just loving the music. Touched me so deeply, Jimmy. Thank you. And imagining you in your St. Francis mobile cafe is just so awesome and joyful. And I remember this story about Baba Ram Dass when he was Richard Alpert. He asked Neem Karoli Baba, like, "Guruji, how do I raise my Kundalini?" And he's like, "Feed people, feed people." And I thought that was great. The other one was Krishna Das. How do I become enlightened? Or maybe it was switched. He said one thing to one and the other to the other one. He said, "Love everyone."
Yeah.
Love everyone. And it really is like getting out of the small self, as St. Francis says, and just seeing all others as that divine beloved in form. And how do we see them through an innocent heart? How do we love that homeless person who's grumpy, even that you're 30 minutes late? I mean, it's like, when we're met by non-love, how do we return it with love?
Beautiful. Thank you, Eden. Thank you. I want to read a few comments. Noel writes, "I feed the birds in the morning outside, and they also let me know when I'm late. I also feed my birds," and Eden has heard that, actually. She goes, "Oh, I hear the birds in the background, Scott." I want to read a story from someone watching on Unified. Christy Grace writes, this was in response when we were talking about St. Francis. She wrote, "I had a super profound experience in Assisi when I went to his tiny little chapel where his mission began. I meditated with his statue that apparently was where he meditated. And it was at sunset. And as I sat beside the cement figure, I truly felt like I was enveloped in Francis's love. It catapulted me to a joy I still feel today. He was and still is a huge part of my spiritual path." And that's a whole show we could do sometime of, experiences we have like that. We talked earlier about Self-Realization Fellowship Lake Shrine, and I experienced the spirit of Yogananda there many, many times. And I can see Sandy is nodding her head. Yeah, he's there. Sandy, you'll appreciate this. I was there once, and one of the little boats got loose and made a complete circle around the lake. It took about an hour and a half, and just as it got back to where it began, the monk noticed it and came and tied it back up. It was like, oh, Yogananda went for a little ride around the lake. I'm going to put the spotlight on one of our guests who's in this room. I don't know her, but she sent me a letter today, and she's written a book right along the lines of this topic. So welcome, Josiane.
Thank you so much, Scott, for having me. And this is so unexpected, but this is how life goes, right? And
exactly.
I love it. So yes, my book just came out. It's about compassionate love in intimate relationships. And the subtitle is The Integration Process of Sexual Mastermind, Racism, and Resilience. So basically there's hope out there. There is hope. And I had to go out in the trenches, literally to go interview Black couples that are resilient from all different types of background, of educational levels and social status, in order to know how do you make it without a clinic, without any help. How do you make it? We know that you're not coming to therapy. So where are you? I'm a therapist. I'm a couple therapist. And I was looking for them because I was looking for answers about love. And especially I was looking for how do we know that there's harmony and balance when we put our spirit, mind, and body together. So what is it in our intimate relationship? And I asked mystics, I asked people, and I asked these couples, and that's the answer. They told me that what makes the harmony and balance is the spirituality, compassionate love, and sexuality together. If it's missing one of these amazing dimensions, then you cannot really ascend or transcend your reality. And that's how I was able to write, to compile their testimonies and interviews that they really kindly offered to me. And I need to explain to you that compassionate love is divine love. But scientists put their minds together in 1999, and they were looking for a solution for all those human-made disasters. They were desperate. So there were not only scientists, there was Lynn Underwood. She's a researcher, and she gathered all this crowd of amazing economists, philosophers, and religious leaders. And they say, how do we stop that? How do we stop this disaster? And they say, well, we need love. And then they say, no, we need compassion. And you know how researchers, they're always looking for a working definition. And they will not go into divine love because this is too much, to bring spirituality into science, when really spirituality is science. So they put their mind together and they come up with compassionate love. And compassionate love means the love centers on the good for the other. Okay? For the good of the other. And what interviewing these wonderful couples, what came up for me in listening to them is that compassionate love, and I'm going to read from my book now, just because I'm so emotional to be with an amazing crowd of presenters and souls. So compassionate love is that survival skill of human goodness in action. And while our goodness is the unique human strength and defense against all ill will and darkness, it's our only preservation.
That's beautiful. Thank you. First of all, thank you for being on and being someone who watches our shows. And thank you for the time that you've put into writing this book. And I see Reverend Deb has her namaste up. So, Rev Deb, is there something you'd like to share? And you're muted.
Isn't that what it's about? Human goodness.
Human goodness.
If we could just tweak our civilization toward human goodness, maybe when we lived in tribes, it was simpler to take care of one another. Now we're a huge one world, one planet. We still need to take care of one another. Yeah. And if we just can all cultivate our human goodness, the compassion in our hearts, then we have a chance.
Josiane, please put into the chat box how people can get your book, and I'll also put that into some of the major Facebook pages. And Eden, I'm curious what came up for you, because this is right along the lines of what you teach, And Eden, by the way, is the ordained priestess of the 13 Moon Mystery School. And I just watched this incredible program she did yesterday with hundreds of women tuning in, and a few men. It
was wonderful how many men were there. It was so great. It It was called Enter into the Temple. And even though most of my outreach was talking about sisterhood and beloved sister, there was so many beautiful brothers, including yourself, that showed up. And when Josiane was reading about compassionate love, I was just so lit up, because the first temple we do is the temple of the Great Mother. And this is about the unconditional embrace and this embodied experience of being really held and accepted, not for what we do or anything we prove. We don't need to be anything. We don't have to show we're lovable. We're inherently lovable. And then the next temple that we dive into in the year-long training, these are day-long ceremonies, is the goddess of compassion. And we know her, cross-culturally throughout time with different names. Could be Tara, Kuan Yin, Mother Mary. This frequency of compassion is so important right now. And often the one that we have the hardest time forgiving or finding compassion for is ourselves. One of the deepest mystery school kind of truths that I've come to really feel this as an embodied experience is, until we love ourselves, that self-love level, until we fill our own chalice with that divine love and self-compassion and self-forgiveness and self-honoring, we cannot really serve others at the level we want to. We can't love as unconditionally as we want to, because we'll always be reaching out into what I sometimes call the hall of mirrors, trying to get something to fulfill us, trying to get some validation, some approval, some conditional love. But when we find that compassion and deep unconditional embrace within ourselves, then we're just overflowing. And like in the tarot, the cups are overflowing into one another. They're not pouring and emptying, they're overflowing like a fountain. So when you were reading the definition of this compassionate love, I was remembering all the miracles of that I get to witness in these circles of women that come in and they know, I want to trust myself. I want to recognize my wholeness, my enoughness. I want to live more confidently and have an embodied sense of purpose and be of service. And I see women come in from all different angles, some from the corporate world who have put on that masculine armor and lost their sensuality, their intuition, their softness. And for them, it's like watching it just melt away and them return to vulnerability and to their sensitivity in a really powerful way, that then they can be in relationship with the masculine again, and they can trust their enoughness, not because of their salary or their status, but their inherent lovability. And then the other way, where women come in and they don't know what their purpose is, and they find that sovereign voice of, I love this. This is what I'm here to create and how I want to serve. They find that spark, their creative joy. They feel the fire that they had not known to bring to the world their gifts and their offerings. So I get to see miracles of transformation, the alchemy of unconditional love over and over. And I feel so blessed by this path that I've kind of accidentally found myself in. It found me. It was just such a blessing 13 years ago.
Beautiful. Well, we're going to get a chance to learn more about Eden throughout the weekend. And we're kind of wrapping up. We're actually at the 9 o'clock mark, but I'd love to give Reverend Deb and Brother James a chance to, any final thoughts? And also, how can we support you? What are you doing? What links do you want me to pull up for us to share? Because both of you are doing such beautiful work in the world. So I'd love to give you each, and thank you for taking a Friday night to be with us. Really a blessing. And the people in the chat box are feeling so honored to be with all of you. And I certainly am feeling that way as well.
Ladies first.
Well, Scott, as always, I just honor you for gathering the Global Peace Tribe. It's time for us to acknowledge that we are one tribe here on planet Earth. And all of the miracles of divine love are available to us when we come together as one in service to humanity and all life on Earth. So thank you. I will put in the chat the link to the book that the Evolutionary Leaders put out called Our Moment of Choice, Evolutionary Visions and Hope for the Future. And we just got the good news that it's going to come out in paperback this spring.
Wow.
So I'm excited about that.
It's a beautiful book, and something that you were a significant part of the birth process with that book.
I am one of the editors as well as one of the contributors, and we have 43 evolutionary leaders who have contributed, and many of them have been on this show.
Yep.
Bruce Lipton and Greg Braden and Jean Houston, and just wonderful, deep, compassionate humans, just like everybody who's on with us tonight.
And speaking of books, I've put into the chat box on our primary Facebook pages and here in the Zoom room how people can reach Josie Ann's book. So just click up that link, and that's how you can get her book. And it looks like a wonderful book. I'm gonna pull up the page just real briefly, and then we'll go to Jimmy. But there it is: Compassionate Love in Intimate Relationships, the Integration Process of Sexual Mass Trauma, Racism, and Resilience. And Josie Ann, I definitely am going to ask you to be one of our presenters on a future show where we kind of tackle some of this, because these are such incredibly important topics of how to transform and to go through the healing process. And boy, you're hitting so many of the important bases in our culture here. So thank you for everything it requires to write a book like that. Thank you. And speaking of books, Dia pointed out that our beloved Jimmy wrote a book called St. Francis and the Animals Who Loved Him. It's a self-published book by Jimmy. And, quote, it's a new kind of book for listening and singing. Each story is accompanied by a song and a music video. It's got precious illustrations from I'll let you tell that pronunciation. But I'm going to pull that up and tell us a little bit about that book.
Well, last year I did something that was amazing and fun and powerful. I spent 6 months in seclusion, following a European tradition from the Middle Ages called the anchorite, where I was in a little small area, a little enclosure that I didn't leave for the entire 6 months, and just spent that time in deep reflection. But I also ended up writing 2 books, making, I think, 3 albums, and I did an animated movie. The creative juices were flowing, and I'd always wanted to write a children's book. And so I found this wonderful illustrator artist in Argentina, and she did all the illustrations, and it's just it was such a precious book to write, to share. And I just wanted to put it out myself, just, because I love some of the old stories of Francis and the animals, and we hear so much about the animals that he loved, and this is more the story of the animals that loved him. So it's just a wonderful book. My granddaughter loves when I read her stories from it. So if you have a granddaughter or a son or child, it's a wonderful group of stories to share.
All right, I found it here so I'm going to pull it up and you can direct us a little bit. There it is. St. Francis and the Animals Who Loved Him. So there's the book itself. How do we get the book? What's the best way to get it?
Go to Amazon. Yeah, the best place is Amazon.
Okay, great. So I'm gonna go find it on Amazon. And while I do that, tell us a little bit more. Anything, final thoughts you'd like to share with us, Jimmy?
I am just always so happy to join with passionate people who are not holding back, who are really part of this fire that has been lit and is spreading everywhere. You know, this is the time to dive into the fire, not to dance around the fire, but to dive right in, so that all the things that we no longer need or require are burned away, and we're left with that essential element, that transformation that allows us to do the great work that we came here to do. And I'm just so happy to be able to have been here and to share with these amazing people, you know, Deborah and Eden and you, Scott, and everyone else. It's just been such a beautiful gift. And if anyone wants more information on me, I did put these two sites on the chat. My website is jamesftwyman.com, not jamestwyman.com. We had some confusion about that earlier. That doesn't take you really anywhere. James F. Twyman. And also, if you want to, if you're ever looking for a wonderful spiritual community in one of the best places in the world to live, where it's the second best weather in the whole world, and it costs about a third of what it costs to live in the US, come and join our Namaste community here in Ajijic, Mexico. You can get more information from that just going to namaste-village.com and check it out.
All right. So I'm going to go to a few websites of our presenters. Here is on Amazon. And remember, everybody, when you're buying from Amazon, go to Smile Amazon so that a portion of that goes to a nonprofit. And we are applying, and soon that'll go to Global Peace Tribe. But there it is, St. Francis and the Animals Who Loved Him. And hurry, there's only 6 left in stock. So I'm going to actually buy one right now and have it sent to me. I certainly want to get it. And then I also want to go to both, let's take a look first at Deb Moldow, and then we're going to go to our dear friend Eden. This is our moment of choice. And for anybody watching on Facebook, the website is ourmomentofchoice.com, ourmomentofchoice.com. And you definitely want to make sure you put in your name and your email address so that you can find out about all things going on with Deborah and the Synergy Foundation, Source of Synergy Foundation, I should say, to get it properly. And there it is. There's the book, Evolutionary Visions and Hope for the Future. And it's a beautiful, beautiful book. I enjoyed, actually, before I got to know Deb, she had sent me a copy of it. And I was amazed at all the incredible authors. Jean Houston, who I've always had such tremendous respect for, among others. So there you have it. And I'm going to go back to Eden, and let's take a look at, tell us about your priestess training.
Yeah, so I don't know if you want to pull up EdenAmadora.com, or we can go straight to the priestess training page. This is the online priestess training. And it's really beautiful. You know, the pandemic created a lot of adversity for many. My work was all in person before. And there were many months where I'd been planning on starting my priestess circle that I'd been doing for many, many years. It's my 13th year now. And because of the pandemic, I had women requesting, still do it. Just let's meet on Zoom. Let's do it online. And I wasn't sure. I was wondering, can we go deep? Can we feel these frequencies? And we did, and we can. And it was so beautiful and so transformational. And not only were women that wanted to do it in person able to do it, women from far away that could have never gotten here to do it in person were able to join us. So it increased this global sisterhood, and women in communities that don't have other sisters and sacred mirrors were able to be held and witnessed and transform in this global group. Really, I mean, there's been women from all across this country, in Australia, in Europe, that are now doing this 13-moon priestess work with me. And so I decided to do it again. And I have wonderful support for the women who've already gone through, that are coming back through, and we can hold more people now in this way. So I wanted to make this available and to let people know that I'm always listening And there's a belief like, oh, well, this is very expensive. I can't do this kind of training. But we have some generous donors who have given to a scholarship fund for this work to spread. For many of the women are, healers, yoga teachers, single mothers, people that couldn't naturally do a mystery school tuition in its fullness that now can because of the scholarship fund. So if you're called, if you read through that page, you can find it at edenamadora.com under the Mysterium. Scott, can you put it in the chat? Maybe we can pop it right in.
Yeah, and actually there, as you're talking, a good way to start is to go to your main website, which is her name. So it's easy to remember. Eden Amadora, Eden, E-D-E-N, Amadora, AMADORA.com. And then once you go there, you can go down, and I tell you, I want to encourage everybody to take her quiz. She's created this really fun quiz where you learn what kind of beloved archetype you are. And it's one of those quizzes where you fill out a few questions and then you get an email back. And it's really, really fun. And it's really accurate, actually. When I took the quiz, I was like, oh my God, this is cool. So go to edenamadora.com, take the quiz, it's free. And then, of course, you can also get more information there about her mystery school, or if you want private coaching with her.
Yeah, and you can find the mystery school in my offerings, Work With Me. And
there it is,
you can scroll through, look for the Mysterium. Wonderful.
Right.
Thank you, Scott.
And somebody had asked about Jimmy's where he is. So I found it, Namaste Village. And many of our viewers are saying they're going to move to Namaste Village. So you've just opened the portal, Jimmy. It looks like some of our viewers are packing their bags even as we speak.
It's quite a magical place. We went from having 11 tiny little apartments to 41 houses or apartments in 2.5 years. So it is just a magical place to join, come visit, come live. And by the way, Eden, I wanted to say that my St. Francis Cafe bus is sitting in the driveway of one of your priestesses, Sarah Uma Kane.
Oh, yes. She's my sister. She's
watching over
one of my beloveds. I'm going to have to tell her about this. This is awesome. Synchronicity.
And there really is. And I guess I just want to close that out by saying what you just saw, that his food on wheels is parked where one of the people who studied with Eden is. And everybody is part of this beautiful global peace tribe. And, some are a little bit more famous and some are on the show as guests or presenters or musicians. But everybody who hears my voice right now, and I want to acknowledge all the people watching the replay, because actually the majority of the people who are going to watch this watch the replay. You all are a precious part of our family. And remember that I love the analogy, we've heard it many times, just as the caterpillar dies, the old paradigm is dying. And as the caterpillar dies and becomes this kind of gooey soup, all the imaginal cells find each other. And Jimmy finds Eden, who finds Deborah, who finds Josiane, who finds Terry Russo, who finds Beverly. And so it is. And we all keep finding each other. And as the imaginal cells find each other, from that the butterfly is born. But like Deborah said, there is that 3 days to 3 weeks, whatever that gestation period is, whatever that time is between the crucifixion and the resurrection, between the death of the old paradigm and the birth of the new. It's a goo, and nobody knows what's really happening here. But we just keep finding each other and providing support. I want to encourage everybody, please, there's a lot more Eden Amadora and Awakening World happening this weekend. Of course, tomorrow night. For those of you who are Global Peace Tribe members, please come on into the Zoom room early at 5:30. We're going to do a special tribute to Thich Nhat Hanh. And tomorrow night we've got the Twin Ray. And we love Shekinah Ma and Sanandaji. They're going to be with us. Wonderful music with Josh Jaffe and Johanna Beekman. And of course, Eden Amadora and some special guest surprises. And then on Sunday, we've got a really cool Sacred Sunday show to kind of wrap it up. And we're going to be really looking at specific and practical tools for creating more miracles in our life. And of course, it'll be Eden and myself welcoming Nierka. Nierka was on our show recently. You talk about passion. Jimmy, you want to meet a passionate woman? Wait till you meet Nierka. This woman, she is a powerhouse. And beloved, beautiful brother, Astorius Miraculi. And that's how we're going to wrap up on Sunday. So definitely join us. And thank you, everybody. Thank you, Deborah, Eden, Jimmy. Most of all, everybody watching the show. God's blessings. And we look forward to seeing you later on this weekend. Good night,
Thank you, everyone.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
I think